Thank you for holding this hearing, although I'm sorry to be here because I thought we'd solve this problem. And we seem to be struggling to get back to the answer we found 2 years ago. I think that we've worked hard on this issue at the Federation of Labour. Working alone at night is a significant issue for us. There are thousands of people who do this all over the province, and it's a dangerous situation. You made the decision about pay before you pump. It was the right decision. We applauded the decision at the time. We heard many people say it would restrict payment, it would cause grief at the pumps, it would be a real problem. And frankly, like a lot of things, after it happens, it becomes the norm. And in this case, the norm was a good thing, that actually we now have that rule in place. And while it doesn't happen everywhere still, it does happen most places, although I still find the odd gas station that doesn't do it. And I just want to say that I think that, it has been effective. The Vancouver Police Department told us they haven't had incidents of gas and dash in this region since the regulation was brought in, so it actually served its function, is serving its function, and it was a good thing. The other rules you, of course, approved at the time was that it wasn't just the gas and dash that was the problem. It was working by yourself at night. And as we said, most of the studies show that's the most vulnerable time by yourself at night in a store. And so you made a decision which we applauded. You said from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a simple solution, which a number of employers were already doing. Either have two people working, which discourages robberies, or lock the door, put a barrier in, or put a drawer in and use the drawer to get your goods at night. On the theory that people want cigarettes 24 hours a day, that's fine. Employers want to sell things 24 hours a day. They want chips and cigarettes sold. But the people doing the job shouldn't have their safety sacrificed for that desire by the employer. It was a good decision which we applauded. It came after many hearings. And then you were lobbied very strongly by the employers afterwards to withdraw that regulation. And so we've had 2 years of that regulation not being imposed and people still working at night without proper protection. So now we had what you're calling the third option, which we're describing as really watering down the situation and allowing employers not to implement the first two, but simply to bring in some basic precautions for people working alone at night, including a camera to film the robbery or the stabbing or the incident, and a buzzer that you can press that could bring the employer coming with anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. And of course having things lit up, which all makes sense to me, whether there's two people there or no people there. It should be lit up, those things should be done. And frankly, those were already in the act. You could have to go and look and decide what kind of steps we take if it was a violent situation. Now we know it is a dangerous situation. We do know that. We did a lot of studying of this. We went to a lot of convenience stores, gas stations over the last 2 years, most recently to Mac stores. And we found the real problem with working of danger at night was working alone at night. That was the real problem. And lack of training. In almost every case, there was no training. You did a survey, I think 300 or 350. Almost all of them out of compliance. And also tactics such as trying to get employees to pay for stolen goods, which creates the whole dynamic, only now you're introducing it inside the store as opposed to outside at the gas station, at the pump. The DePaties, and we worked with them very closely, they're very clear that this is part of the DePaties of the grants law. This was an integral part of making it safe for people at night. We didn't really like the two people, but it was better than nothing, and it gave the employers an option. They could either hire two people or they could lock the door and put in a drawer. And let me just be clear, many of them did. Many of them were doing it, and many more did. They followed the rules. They put two people on. I went to stores after you did that, and people were excited and happy there was now two people working. So it worked. I applaud you for it. It was a great decision. And I'll tell you, the people who worked in those stores thought it was a good decision too. And they're actually what this is all about. It's not really about the owners. It's really about the people who are there at night doing that. And so now you're suggesting they have a third way of doing this, a watered down way of doing it from the other two, which really means those other two are not enforceable. We go back to agreeing that it's okay to have one person working late at night by themselves. I just want to read something to you that I think is important. In selecting measures to reduce risk, preference should be given to implementing available and practicable engineering controls. These controls generally provide passive protection, which is not dependent on a person taking a specific action. This could be particularly important in an emergency or crisis situation. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm sure the people who wrote it at the board thought it made sense too. We want you to think about that now, because what you decided was basically to do that, to take the risk away from the situation. And now you're suggesting we should introduce the risk back. Now, I don't know what safety studies prove that introducing the risk back is a good decision. We had the incident where the woman was attacked, saved by a hero in a wheelchair who happened to be in the store. Who knows what would have happened to her? A number of incidents happen when you're out there, but it could have been a horrible situation. It was just a fluke that somebody else was in the store at the time. And we know that people wait till the store is empty to rob them. That's well documented. We surveyed Mac stores in this spring, and a number of those stores, in one case, a worker surveyed was a new employee, indicated that he'd been robbed the night before, at knife point. At 1 o'clock in the morning, he was robbed at knife point. He was a new employee, and he did have an emergency pager on, but he didn't use it. It was in his coat pocket in the back of the store. And but even if he had pressed it, it wouldn't have made any difference to the situation at all. You see, pressing the button doesn't do anything. It simply tells somebody there's a problem there, and maybe they'll get there within some undisclosed period of time. In fact, in this case, and the other stores we went into, it was another employee. It wasn't the employer. It was another employee that was hooked up to that who lives somewhere in the area. So if there is a robbery, I guess the question is, if there is a robbery, why would you want another employee to come rushing to the scene? Is that actually a correct response? Does that meet your standard for safety? Who, by the way, is not trained to deal with assaults with weapons. They were personal emergency transmitters, but they all felt that they weren't protected. The employer wasn't looking after their safety. I was at a gas station the other day, and I talked to the person who came up to fill my tank up, and I said to him that, I got talking with him, of course, and I said, "You've got a convenience store. What do you do at night? Is it open 24 hours? And he said, "Yes, it's open 24 hours. And I said, "Oh." I said, "So is it dangerous?" He said, "Well, we locked the door. We locked the door because we had a rash of robberies, and the WCB came in and told us we had to lock the door." He said, "They're the only people who care about our safety." Let me repeat that. He said, "They're the only people who care about our safety." There was a rash of robberies. He said, "You know what they like to do? They like to rob women who are working alone. That's the best time." And he said, "There's only $50 in the till. But they came and robbed it for $50. We couldn't figure out why anyone would bother robbing somebody for $50. But they had 4 or 5 robberies over the course of a period of time. And I don't know if it's true or not that you went and told them to lock the door, because you didn't have a law to tell them to do that. But you're the only people these people have. They're not going to get a union. We're not going to go and do this. In fact, in Max, they formed, workers in 2 stores formed a union. They closed both the stores down and fired them all. Really, you're it. I'd like to say, I'm going to go do that, and the labor movement's going to go do this. We're going to have safety committees. We're going to do it on the... That's not going to happen. Do you know how much turnover there is in these stores? There's a huge turnover in these stores. These aren't the greatest jobs. So what you're suggesting is a very complicated but system that doesn't keep them safe. What you said before was a really simple one that everybody could figure out. 1, 2. Other 2 people. If they're not, is the door locked or is there a barrier protecting them? We know you did a study about barriers, but we were never part of that. And I just want to say it disappointed me because I've always thought the board believed in balance and transparency. Those are 2 good things when you're making regulations that affect workers and employers. Balanced approach, input from both sides, and that clearly didn't happen here. We weren't part of the discussion about the barriers. We haven't even seen the study. We haven't even seen the study you're now quoting. And employers are quoting. We've never got it. We've asked for it numerous times. So it doesn't really meet the test. I think the board should apply to itself, and does, actually. And I think you should be proud of that standard, that you're transparent. But that didn't happen in this case. And I think that's wrong, actually. I do. You know, these study, we don't know what it said, what it did, what the barriers do. We didn't have the address to go and look. Who represented workers in this discussion? Because we don't know. And you know, the studies that form the basis of what you did, the majority of studies show that 2 people are a deterrent to robbery. That people who are going to rob a store wait for the customers to leave before they rob the store and there's one left. It just makes sense. It's not actually rocket science. If you're going to go rob a store, it's easier to rob 1 person than it is to rob 2. Doesn't mean you won't, but it certainly seems that that's the case. And I just want to say again that, you know, there was other studies. The Gainesville Police Department clearly identified that having 2 employees resulted in a 74% reduction in convenience store robberies, whereas implementing the other measures, such as those recommended in your watered-down position, saw a reduction of 7.6 to 30%. So they don't work. 92% of robberies occurred when only 1 clerk was present in the store, and 85% of robberies occurred when there were no customers. It's just logical. It makes sense. So we don't know. We don't have any scientific. We're the only ones that went out and talked to these people. The workers out there were happy when you changed the rules, and the ones that are working alone, there's some. Let me say this. Some say, I'm safe. I'm not worried about it. But I'm not sure that's how we should judge it if somebody feels tough working in a dangerous situation. We've seen way too many people injure themselves because they think they're invincible. Somebody points a knife at you, you're not invincible anymore. And so we really come back to going forward from here. How do we actually make people safe at night if employers want to have their stores open? I want to say that we feel at this point what you're doing is you're writing a regulation to support the lowest common denominator. That you're punishing the people that have 2 people working at night, who, by the way, is selling the same bag of chips, the same cigarettes, the same toothpaste, but they have 2 people working. You're punishing the people that actually close the door and have a drawer so workers are safe at night, which is probably the best solution. That punishing them, by watering down the regulation, you're just punishing them, and you're actually rewarding the people that don't want to do what keeps workers safe at night. The camera guy out here said to me tonight, you know, I just don't understand it. My daughter came home the other day, she works in a deli, and actually she's got a job. She's thinking, it says she got a job at a gas station. And I told her she couldn't do it. I wouldn't let her go to work there. And the fact is, I'd say if you surveyed British Columbians, they'd tell you the same thing. None of them would want their kids working there. The reason is obvious. Just like that camera person, they don't want their kids put at risk. Then why should we let anybody else's kids be put at risk? Because that's what we're doing. We're playing Russian roulette with these people. When we have a really simple, straightforward answer to solve it, backed up by studies, science, police reports, the whole 9 yards, we know you're safer. So I guess my real appeal to you is, these people don't have anybody else but you. No one else is going to do this. No one else is going to make sure they're safe. You made the right decision. You should enforce that decision and not back up and not water it down. Because actually, there's no evidence to show that this is a safer way to do it. All the evidence is the opposite. Really what you're doing is listening to the economic arguments of a small sector of the employers. You changed the rules from 10 to 11. There was no safety reason to do that. The police told us that it was actually 6 o'clock and beyond that was more dangerous. And if the liquor stores got their hours changed to 1 o'clock like they want, would you then move it to 1 o'clock? But there's no safety reason for any of this. There was no safety reason for that change, and there's no safety reason for this option you've put on the table. You got the answer right. All I can say is, please enforce it. It was the right answer. We also know that we did submit 1,400 other letters to the board through the email system of people who want it changed, or want the rules enforced. So again, I wish you well in your deliberations. This is a serious issue, and we should finish the job we started for those people. They want it finished. Thank you.